Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Cash That. This is your host, Joe Dellera, and we are finally at the NBA playoffs. One of the best times of the year. Love the round 1 series, round 2 series. Just, it's a great experience for us as big basketball fans. We're out of like the March, April doldrums where you have these tanking teams. All the games matter. Everybody's trying, and that creates some of the best basketball environment that you're ever going to have. Have to lead it off with the fact that it just capped off a great regular season for us and had a fantastic regular season, cashed a ton of different futures. We're seeing them roll in. The accounts are pretty flush. The biggest one that I was really happy about was Brandon Miller, 20 plus points per game, and the Hornets to win 40 games at 30-1. Gave that out. Tremendous hit. Really happy about that. Got a sweep on the last NBA regular season slate today. Went 5-0. So just really couldn't do better than that. Just happy to be looking at some of these games now for the playoffs. So look, the biggest thing is with a lot of these bets and a lot of these lines and a lot of these activities is we want to be able to make sure that we get you the best lines and the best plays and at the best price. And the way that you can do that the most effectively, from me anyway, is you join the huddle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a 50% off coupon right here. Get all the plays first. I'll direct you. We usually have quick slips and links for everything. So that way you can just go directly to the bet. You don't have to think about it, and you can just go right there and be able to log it and tail what I'm giving out. So that's going to put you in the best position, as we generally are going to be able to beat some of the markets on some of these spots. I'm going to talk in this episode some of my initial thoughts of the playoff bracket, and I'm going to talk about some of the things that I'm either looking to bet, or a couple early bets that I may have made already. And you guys are going to have the opportunity to follow those. But again, this is almost like an instant reaction to what happened on the end of the regular season. So we're seeing the slate fresh right now, and we're seeing the bracket fresh right now. So some of these aren't going to be up yet, and especially some of the leader bets, but I want to make sure that I can get that to you as soon as I can. For those of you that have been listening to me and following along, my wife is pregnant. We are having a baby in a couple days. So this episode is, I'm kind of like sneaking it in right now. So just in a little bit of time that I have, and I wanted to make sure that you guys had a little bit of opportunity and a couple bets from me as I had a little bit of downtime, so we're going to roll right into that. All right, so right now we know a couple things. We've got the 4-5 and the 3-6 matchups in each conference locked in. We know, obviously, the 1 seeds are the Thunder and the Pistons. The 2 seeds are the San Antonio Spurs and the Boston Celtics. Some of the games that were today obviously impacted these final seedings and some of these final matchups. And a couple things that I wanted to touch on first, and the biggest one to me was my initial reaction to the games today was that I thought it was interesting that Atlanta wanted to play New York instead of Cleveland, because they really just kind of sat all their guys and were just like, okay, like we'll just play whoever. To a degree, I get it, where they're just saying, well, like we'd rather rest our guys today because they knew that they couldn't fall into the play-in tournament. So maybe that was more of what the motivation was. But as a Knicks fan, I would have rather played the Raptors, who we've absolutely destroyed this season. I think they're the worst out of the top 6 seeds in the East for sure. Looking at the Western Conference, though, the spot that I was most surprised about was the Nuggets played the Spurs today. Denver basically sat everybody, and Jokic really only played his 20 minutes to be eligible for end-of-season awards. The Spurs sat Wemby, played everybody else, and still lost. Now, the reason that this was important was, had the Nuggets lost this game, or had the Spurs won this game, Denver slides down to 4. And you get Denver out of your side of the bracket. And while it's still unlikely that the Lakers probably would have beat the Timberwolves, I think you still want to play the Wolves instead of the Nuggets, especially at that juncture. And maybe Denver can knock off Oklahoma City. Instead, now you have the situation where if you're Denver, you're kind of looking at this and you're saying, well, like, we don't care. Like, we're going to have to beat everybody anyway. And I think that Denver is somewhat comfortable in this matchup against San Antonio, given how Jokic is against Wemby and how Aaron Gordon has been against Wemby. So I think Denver feels relatively comfortable, I guess. The biggest winner out of this, though, is the Thunder. The Thunder are by far the biggest winners here. They are going to be playing the winner of the Whoever wins the 9-10 plays the loser of the 7-8. So you're going to be playing one of the Suns, Blazers, Clippers, or Warriors. Probably going to sweep that series. Then you're playing the winner of the Lakers and the Rockets. I don't think you're super worried about either of those teams, especially the Lakers as is. Luka's still hurt. Austin Reeves is still hurt. Not really a great scenario if you're the Lakers. I don't know if they're necessarily even going to be hit back against the Rockets. I think it's a pretty tall task to ask LeBron to do at this stage of his career with the other players that are around him on this roster if Luka and Reeves are both hurt. Oklahoma City, it wouldn't shock the conscience if they sweep out until the Western Conference Finals. So I think that that's something that, maybe we need to look at and maybe we need to consider. And one of the bets that I was actually looking at here was I was looking to see, who's going to be in the Western Conference Finals. And right now you could bet, let's see, to advance to the Western Conference Finals, the Thunder are minus 650. I wish I could bet this. I would love to bet this, but this number is just outrageous. It was something I was hoping that would maybe be a good number, not so much anymore because of the way this bracket broke. I think that Oklahoma City is going to cruise to the NBA Finals probably, honestly, but definitely until the Western Conference Finals. So I will be backing them. I'll probably be betting them to sweep. I will be betting them in like a variety of different ways to advance throughout the postseason. I think it's a great opportunity for them. Looking at the Eastern Conference, though, this game was fascinating where Orlando basically sent out their entire real roster and lost to, apparently I saw a statistic. It was the cheapest or like lowest paid set of players that played a game together somehow this season. It was like $11.5 million. And Boston won at plus 560. We gave that out. Gave that out on X, actually. Because I like them for the up 10 promo, and then they just won outright. Tough spot, because now Orlando wound up dropping all the way to 8. They're not even going to host this 7-8 game. Do I think they beat Philly without Joel Embiid, with a somewhat hurt Tyrese Maxey? Probably. They definitely should, but we'll see how they do against the winner of Hornets Heat. So I'll touch on some of those matchups just in a little bit. I'm going to run through a couple player props for those. But I did want to talk about the bracket overall and what some of my thoughts are. So Pistons are in a pretty good spot here. Obviously, you are playing whoever the winner of that 9-10 and loser 7-8 is. The way I'm a little disappointed as a Hornets backer. I've been a fan of the Hornets. They made me a lot of money, like I mentioned with Brandon Miller. But I do think that this is going to be a spot that's going to be very tough for them. The Heat are just such a well-coached basketball team. I think that they're going to really be able to expose and kind of poke some holes in a lot of the different problems for the Hornets. And I think they're also going to be able to expose a lot of different problems for the Sixers and the Magic. Whoever winds up losing that game and playing them potentially in that matchup to see who plays the Pistons. Detroit, Cade Cunningham's back. That's definitely helpful for them. They should be able to kind of cruise through that first round matchup no matter what. But Miami is always a team where if you wind up playing them, they might expose some things that you don't want anybody else to see. And I think that that's definitely notable. As for the Celtics, they're going to roll, I think, whoever they play, whether it's the Sixers or the Magic. I'm not concerned about that matchup whatsoever here. Looking at the Western Conference play-in, the Clippers and the Warriors, two old teams right now. We're sitting on a preseason Warriors to miss the playoffs ticket at plus money. So I feel like I'm in a pretty good position right now with that. Looking at the Suns versus the Blazers, the Suns should win that game. But they don't really match up great with the Spurs. They definitely don't match up great with the Thunder. Again, I think whichever team comes out of here and winds up playing, honestly, like either of these two teams, the Thunder or the Spurs, is probably just going to be getting a trip to Cancun relatively soon. I want to talk a little bit about some of the spots that I looked at initially for these couple of series, though, and some of the bets that I kind of liked here. So I do think that generally, especially in the NBA, the higher seeds generally advance. You don't see as many upsets. I do think that you might see one here with the Rockets and the Lakers, because the Lakers are actually the underdog here from a seed perspective. And I think that the Timberwolves are a feisty team. They definitely are built pretty well to contend with the Denver Nuggets. But I do think that there's going to be some spots there where you look at Denver and you go, well, they're pretty healthy here. They've got all their guys back, and I think that that's pretty important. While Ant he seems like he's going to be healthy, but he obviously still may be dealing with some of the lingering effects of that ankle or Achilles, whatever it was, that he was dealing with and missed some time with recently. Some of the bets that I was looking at and some of the ones that I thought are always fun is I like to see bets. There's two different kinds of bets that you generally see for the playoffs. You see so-and-so to do something in every game, and then so-and-so to do something in any game. And those are dramatically different bets for different reasons. So if you see a bet like for somebody to do something in every game and you think they might get eliminated pretty fast, then that's a much higher EV bet. Because you're generally projecting fewer games than maybe the sportsbook is in terms of the way that you're betting this. If it's in any game, you usually want to see more games because I think that that's a little bit more helpful. So some of the spots that I look at and some of the areas that I like to go to is if you go to MGM and you go to their futures and then you go to player prop or playoff specials rather. I'm going to refresh it, see if they got anything new right now. But there are a couple bets that I really liked that stood out to me right away. The first one that stood out to me, and I gave this out in the huddle already, and I see that it's down from plus 900 to plus 700, is Steph Castle to record 12 assists in any game. I think that this is a fun bet. I think the Spurs are going to be able to advance at least through the first round, probably into the second round too. And Castle's done this actually in 6 games this season, and he's done it in some of the more recent games. The other thing that I like about this is I think that a lot of times we see players scale up and we see players play more minutes and the rotations tighten a little bit. So I think that Castle is going to be somebody that defenses potentially uses a little bit of like a pressure point. And they might just say, hey, like, you got to beat us. We don't know how, like, you have to beat us. And if he can't do it as a scorer, it has to be as a very, very efficient facilitator. So I think that he's going to have a good opportunity here. And I also think, again, like I said, when you looked at this playoff bracket, you're getting the winner or the loser of the Suns versus the Blazers. If you get the Blazers, that's a very fast-paced team. There's a lot of opportunity there for Castle to really rack up some numbers there. So I do think that that's a pretty good spot and something that I was kind of considering. Additionally, you get the Nuggets or the Timberwolves. You've played both of these teams a million times. They both kind of have good or better options at defending Wemby. I think that this could be a spot where Castle is able to kind of facilitate the basketball a little bit more. So that was one thing that I looked at. The next thing that I looked at, and I think this play is absolutely ridiculous, is Jalen Brunson to score 40-plus points in any playoff game. Jalen Brunson is a playoff monster, absolute monster. He gets as much usage as he wants. He plays as many minutes as he can. And I think part of the thing with Mike Brown that's different than Tibbs is Mike Brown did a pretty good job of limiting his guys' minutes during the regular season. We saw a variety of different rotations. We saw a lot of different actions being tested. And one of the things that we started to see a little bit more lately in the last couple of games was you just saw this Cat Brunson pick and roll that was insanely good. And you go, like, where was this? Like, where has this been all season? I think that the Knicks were basically just saying, we know it's going to work. We know we can coach it up. We know it's going to work because it's Cat and Brunson, two of the best offensive players at their positions. And we're just not going to show anybody it. We don't need to. So for me, this spot with Brunson, you get a matchup against Atlanta. Atlanta plays very, very fast. Then if you win that matchup, you're playing presumably Boston, I would say. And Boston is a team where Brunson has also had some success. The biggest thing is that it's just in the postseason. Games break down and you need your best player to create baskets. Jalen Brunson does that on a consistent basis. And you're getting him to score 40-plus points in any playoff game at even money. I think that's a great bet. It helps me in a way, too, when I'm handicapping. And I think it helps when I'm looking at certain things to bet on a nightly basis. Like for me, it's hard sometimes to pick out specifically in a series, especially. It's like, this is the Brunson game, or this is the Cat game, or this is the OG game. But I just know that one of them is going to happen, and it's going to happen at some point in this series. So for me, getting Brunson to score 40 in any game is something that I just assume is going to happen at least once during the postseason. And it's definitely going to happen at least once in, I would say, the first 2 series. If New York beats Boston, now you get a third series. New York advances to the finals, that's a fourth series. There's not a doubt in my mind that in 4 series, he's getting it. In 3 series, he's also probably getting it. And even in 2, I would be shocked if he does not score 40 points in one game. So I like Jalen Brunson to score 40 plus points in any playoff game. The other spot that I was kind of looking at is Karl Anthony Towns, 15 plus rebounds in any playoff game, but not 100% sure on that. And then even this, the Jalen Brunson 12 plus assists in any playoff game at 4-1, I don't think is a bad bet either. One of the other spots that I was looking at in the Eastern Conference, bet that I love here, Donovan Mitchell will score 40 plus points in any playoff game. The Raptors are garbage, absolute garbage. Donovan Mitchell can do this against them. I think that Donovan Mitchell is going to be able to do this against the Pistons. And Donovan Mitchell also puts up pretty good numbers against both the Knicks and the Celtics. So I think the Cavs have a really good path set up for them right now. I think they're going to have a really short series against the Raptors. I would bet them to sweep. I just don't think the number's great. It's like plus 240. Even minus 2.5 games, I think is reasonable. That's minus 140. I don't mind that as a bet for the Cavs against the Raptors. Raptors, I think, will be lucky to get one game. So be sure to shop around because sometimes, so this is another tip, when you're betting some of these futures markets, they are not like tied together in the same way. So sometimes you'll see a lot of action on like under or like minus 2.5 games. Functionally, that's the same thing as under 5.5 games. So if you want to always kind of line shop and see between the books, it's like, well, what's the better price? Under 5.5 games actually has the additional out that the Raptors like sweep or, win in 5, even though we think that that's unlikely. But either way, you do technically get an additional out. So if they're the same odds, you should bet that. If they're different odds, you generally want to just get whatever's the best price. So that's my advice for that. But Donovan Mitchell will score 40 plus points in any playoff game, plus 225. I think this is an outstanding spot in a spot where, for me, looking at the Cavaliers, I think they're in a very good position. The Cavs have really kind of turned a corner since acquiring James Harden. They're healthy. The Pistons are not necessarily healthy. I have question marks about Detroit just generally. I still have those question marks about the Cavs, but I think at the end of the day, it wouldn't be crazy to say that you have arguably the best, if not the best player in the series, then you definitely have the best 2 players after that in the series, potentially even 3, if you are lining up the Cavs against the Detroit Pistons. So they're going to roll through the Raptors, not even a concern in the world about that one. And I think you get a pretty good opportunity for them to advance against the Detroit Pistons, who, as much as they've been, kind of tested, they've gone through the playoffs a little bit before. I do have some questions about their offense and their ability to generate consistent offense without Cade Cunningham. I know that Jenkins was awesome without him, but that's March, April regular season basketball. I'm not sure if I want to, hang my hat on that in that regard. Looking at the Celtics playoff specials, one of the ones that I liked was Tatum to record 15 rebounds in any playoff game, 15, or it's at 5-1. He's just kind of been a rebound magnet, especially since he came back. This season, they're even thinner at the 5, so I think that you get a pretty good opportunity here for Tatum to get 15 boards. He's done it before in the playoffs, so really wouldn't be shocking, especially if you're high on Boston and you think that they are able to advance to if not the Eastern Conference Finals, but the finals. Plenty of games, plenty of opportunities for him to get there. So I think that was something reasonable here. These Nuggets ones didn't really appeal to me. I was looking at the 40 plus points in anyone. The Rockets, I was looking at Şengün, 15 rebounds in any playoff game, 9-1. I do think that they're going to be able to beat the Lakers. So I think that you're getting a matchup between them and then you're getting the Thunder, presumably. The problem is, I think that you're kind of running out of gas there. I don't think they're going to beat the Thunder. I think there's like an outside chance the Lakers could beat them, especially if Reeves or Luka is able to come back. And I have some concerns with the number of games, because if the Lakers aren't healthy, possible the Rockets maybe just sweep, maybe win in 5. And then it's also possible the Rockets just get crushed by the Thunder. So I have some concerns there as well. This one I think is interesting for Shea to score 20 points in each playoff game. We obviously know about the streak. We know about how it's kind of a fake streak because he didn't score 20 points in one playoff game last season. And either way, I think it's just a reasonable play at minus 125. You need him to score a bunch of baskets. I don't think that it's a crazy look for him to kind of rack that up in really every game here. But again, this goes into path because it's in every game. It's in each playoff game. So we need him to play obviously every game. And then we also need this level of consistency. And I think that the Thunder are going longer. If you think that the Thunder are going to get upset, which I think they might, I would have felt more confident that they would if Denver was in the 4, that maybe Denver could beat them. And then if not Denver, then maybe San Antonio gets a crack at them too. Multiple outs before the finals. And I don't see that right now. I think that they're a shoo-in to make the Western Conference Finals. And as a result, I know that I need at minimum 8 games of Shea scoring 20 plus points in game. And then I'm probably going to need, actually, no, I need a minimum of 12 because he's got to be 4 and 4 to advance twice, and then 4 to either advance or 4 to lose. So I know I need minimum 12 games of this. So I think that at minus 125, you're starting to see some diminishing returns there, even though I think the bet is reasonable overall. Looking at the overall playoff odds here, for teams to make the Eastern Conference Finals, I think you can kind of see and kind of project what some of these like series spreads would presumably be. The interesting thing is, I think that the Cavs are priced interestingly because it presumes that they are going to be favored over the Detroit Pistons here, with them being plus 102 and Detroit being plus 190. For the Celtics and the Knicks, same thing. Boston obviously favored against New York. The price, I think, is going to be a little bit interesting, though, because Boston, I think, should roll in their first round series. The Knicks have a little bit of a tougher matchup against Atlanta. Atlanta, the margin between them and Atlanta was like 6 points in their games, like total in their games this season. So interesting spot there. But ultimately, I think that the price we see here is probably going to be close to that. Maybe it's like minus 140. The Knicks, maybe like plus 130 or so. Maybe that's what we see, but not 100% sure at this juncture, obviously. Some of the spots here, like we gave out Sixers to miss the playoffs at plus 560 or 525. So if you want to bet yes now, you can kind of get out of that. I still like Orlando in the spot here. Looking at these games early, Orlando is a 1-point dog. I wouldn't be shocked to see that flip by tip-off time. Looking at all these play-in games, I think that this price for Miami is a little bit rough. Plus 5.5 against the Hornets. I know the Hornets are capable of putting up some big numbers and big swings, but I think that Miami is in an interesting spot. I think that Miami could definitely beat Charlotte here. So I'm kind of looking for them. And, in some of my looks for the first game of the playoffs, one of the spots that I looked at was and immediately kind of went to and kind of torch this line. So I'm going to give this out now and then we'll come back to it. But Props Madness isn't fetching it right now, but they offered Karl Anthony Towns. Let's see if it's up here. Actually, we'll just go right to the game. They offered Karl Anthony Towns at, we got it at 17.5 in the huddle, and it's now at 20.5 a couple hours later. This is a matchup that I think he is going to absolutely demolish Atlanta. I think that they're going to wind up trying to cover him with Onyeka Okongwu, and that is just not going to fly. Cat has been extremely successful against the Hawks this season. 17.5 points, way too light. 20.5, still think it's playable. I think that the sneaky kind of angle here in this series anyway would be Cat series leader for scoring whenever it becomes available. I think that will be like an interesting spot because I think that Cat could definitely have some big games here. I think that Atlanta has like the wings necessary to kind of force the ball out of Jalen Brunson's hands. So I think that that's always an interesting spot too. I think the interesting thing in this series is going to be how many minutes does Mikal Bridges play? Do we see more Mitchell Robinson or maybe less Mitchell Robinson in the series because Atlanta is not as big at the center position? They're a little bit more rangy from the wing perspective. That's something. And then OG Anunoby hurt his ankle, not this last game, but the game before. Looks like his props are already up. Would assume he's going to be good to go. And he only sat out the final game of the regular season as a precaution. But definitely something to kind of keep an eye on, especially in terms of pricing this series. But that was one of the first plays that jumped out to me was Towns from a points prop for game one. Looking at some of these other games, though, like the Heat versus the Hornets, one of the players, or there's a couple different players that have success against Miami, one of which is LaMelo Ball has actually been pretty good. This line is a little bit high at 22.5, but 2021, 30 points this season. He's done really good from a dime perspective and even from a rebound perspective, too. He just had one kind of lower game here. But I do think that LaMelo is in a good spot here. The other guy, I kind of like Khan in these spots too. 17.5 points, gone over this line in every game against Miami. Brandon Miller's, I guess, listed as questionable. I think he's going to play. There's not a doubt in my mind that he plays. Part of why I think that Khan is so successful in these spots is that, number one, it wouldn't shock me to see Spo just say, beat us. Like, you're the rookie, beat us. The other thing is that Miami does play a good amount of zone. And they do a pretty good job of limiting like ball handlers to a degree because of that zone. But I also think that when you have zones, you can kind of get into like zone busters. And Khan seems to me to be a zone buster. So it's 17.5 points. I like this spot for Khan. I think that we're going to see a ton of minutes from him. You know, some of these games like 24, 20, 31, 34, 40, 27. I think we're going to see a lot of minutes from Khan. I think we're going to see a lot of minutes from their starters. And I think we're going to see a big opportunity for some of these guys to really scale up. Looking at Miami's side, nobody necessarily popped out to me immediately. The guy that I'm interested in, though, is like we're seeing this Jaime Jaquez line at 10.5. And I know that, you know, he struggled in this one game against the Hornets, but he's done really well against them otherwise. Jaime he's playing all these games off the bench, but he's still playing pretty big minutes. You know, at least mid 20s in a lot of them. 10.5 points to me seems a little bit light. We'll see which of these other bench guys for Miami are able to go, and maybe that makes a little bit of a difference here. But 10.5 is definitely something that I would be looking at. Davion Mitchell has had a little bit of an interesting rotation, like up and down minutes, like kind of a little bit all over the place. He's somebody that I think should be in the rotation, but it wouldn't shock me to see him kind of fall out of the rotation as they move into the playoffs. So this 8.5 points line wouldn't shock me if maybe we can grab like a decent under here with the idea that he just kind of gets his minutes slashed a little bit in this playoff rotation. Looking at the Blazers and the Suns, this is a good matchup, I think, for both these teams. I think it's a fun matchup because the pace is going to be so high. The Blazers have actually done a pretty good job defending some of these lead guards, like Brunson, Jaylen Brown, DeRozan, Shea, etc. Devin Booker scored 19 points against them earlier in the season. No Jalen Green, no Grayson Allen. I think all these guys play. Like Dylan Brooks plays, Jalen Green plays, Grayson Allen plays, Gillespie plays, Mark Williams plays. But at the end of the day, you need Devin Booker in this spot. You need him to play max minutes. You need him to put up a ton of shots. I think that he is going to play. I think he's going to be excellent in this opportunity here. I think 26.5 points isn't a bad look. Dylan Brooks is somebody that I don't think needs to score to make his presence felt in this matchup. It also hasn't gone great for him so far. I think they have a number of different options you can kind of throw at him, whether it's Kamara, whether it's Drew Holiday, whatever. So I'm not like sold on Dylan Brooks here, but Dylan Brooks' defense and being able to show up in this game is going to be critical. Denny Avdia, 23.5 points is a little bit of a shocking number here. We'll see if Jeremy Grant plays in this game or not. Probably not, but he's been missing just a ton of games per usual. Denny has kind of turned a corner here. Looking really good from an offensive scoring perspective, especially. I do wonder, and this is my biggest concern with Denny, is that a lot of his success had been from the free throw line. And we've seen him in a lot of these games put up 10, 11, 12 free throws. The whistle tightens in the postseason. And I don't know if he's going to get that same whistle. So for me, that's a little bit of a stay away spot if I'm looking at Denny Avdia props. The other guy that's been really, really good is Toumani Camara, just playing a ton of minutes. Obviously, Shaedon Sharpe came back, and I think maybe he's cutting into his minutes a little bit, but his usage has been great. His minutes have been really solid. 18.5 PR in a game that I think you need his like kind of rangy, wingy defense is great. Drew Holiday, another guy, wouldn't shock me to see him play minutes in the upper 30s in this type of setting. And as a result, I think that this could actually be a pretty good opportunity for him. He's obviously played the Suns a bunch, has not had a huge role in the offense over the past couple of seasons, though, in terms of what he's needed to bring to the table against them. But I do think that Drew at 15 and a half points, it's not unreasonable. I'd probably want to add like PA, because I do think that you might need him to help facilitate the offense a little bit, because they don't really have the same type of guard play. Like obviously you have Scoot Henderson, you have Denny Avdia, but I think that you might need a little bit more Drew Holiday mixed in to make sure that the offense kind of hums. So that's something I would look at there. Looking at the Magic versus the Sixers, you obviously have to look at Tyrese Maxey. There's I don't see any circumstance that Joel Embiid plays in this game. And I think that given that, you kind of have to look at Maxey and just say like, well, what can you bring to the table here? Without Embiid, scored a little bit more. The assists definitely come down though. And, you know, we've seen him play the Magic. Doesn't really dime a ton in the first place here. I want to see where this 5.5 is. I like this 6.5 a hell of a lot better. And I think that under 6.5 assists is probably a pretty reasonable look against Orlando. I know that they might really try to throw the kitchen sink at him and make sure that he gets the ball out of his hands. At the same time, it's a lot to ask of Tyrese Maxey. And again, Orlando has enough physical, wingy type of defenders to make it difficult for Maxey, even if he does pass. It makes it difficult for some of these guys to convert on these opportunities. So I think that Maxey is somebody that is going to go under the assist line. The 6.5, I think, is just too high, even without Joel Embiid. On the flip side, I do think that Paolo is somebody who we see that can play like bigger minutes in the postseason. He's not somebody that has performed particularly well in this matchup, but I do think that not having Embiid matters. I also think that Paolo is just somebody that can absorb usage. I think he's better in some of these one-on-one situations. And again, I don't know if Philly really has somebody great to defend him straight up. Looking at Desmond Bane, he's played really well against Philadelphia this season and last season. Franz Wagner has played very well against Philadelphia over the past couple of seasons. And even Jalen Suggs has scored pretty well, not this season, but he also played them in two like relatively low minute games, 21 and 16. Wouldn't shock me to see him. You know, he's been playing 20, whatever, but then he just played 38 against the Boston Celtics. So I think his minutes are up. I think he's good to go. I think that these lines where some of these guys in the Magic are a little bit lower, I wouldn't be shocked to see them play minutes in the 40s in this type of scenario. Looking at the Warriors versus the Clippers, obviously if Kawhi Leonard plays, like he's the guy. That's where you're looking at. The problem is the Warriors have done a pretty good job of limiting Kawhi. At the end of the day, though, I think that Kawhi is going to play a ton of minutes here and get a ton of run. The one guy who I don't really know if he's going to play a ton of minutes, honestly, is Brook Lopez. Played 23 minutes against them last time out. I don't really think they were doing anything in particular in that game. But for me, Brook Lopez, I think just his game isn't really conducive to this spot, especially from what he does. Like he's in a drop coverage big. And the one thing that you really don't want to do against the Golden State Warriors play drop coverage against Steph Curry, Porzingis, etc. So I wouldn't shock me to see Brook Lopez kind of get run off the court a little bit, or maybe even had his minutes like managed to a degree. So for me, I like this under 11.5 points. I think that's a reasonable bet. I'm not super interested in the rebounds just because they don't really play anybody either. So I think that under 11.5 points is a pretty reasonable bet against the Warriors here. I don't think that he's going to have a ton of minutes. I would project his minutes to be capped at like the 25 mark here. And when you do that in the head-to-head matchups, he hasn't hit it at all. And when you look at this season and you kind of go to the max, he's only hit this in 7 of 54 games. So I just don't see enough room upwards for Brook Lopez. And I'm going to grab under 11.5 points there. And, you know, that's kind of where we're at right now with some of these spots. And we'll dive into some of these games for Saturday a little bit later. Again, be sure to check out what we've got going on in the huddle. I'm going to be giving out more player props, more series props, more futures, and talking about it that way. Just to go back to the playoff picture, the way that I kind of have this set up, I have the Heat beating the Hornets in the play-in. I have the Magic beating the Sixers, and then I have the Heat beating the Sixers as well. So I have the Heat against the Pistons, and I have the Magic against the Celtics. I have the coming out of the West. I have the Clippers beating the Warriors. I have the Blazers beating the Suns, and then I have the Suns beating the Clippers. I have both. I have the Thunder advancing, the Spurs advancing. I have Denver beating the Wolves. I have the Rockets beating the Lakers. Looking in the Eastern Conference, I have the Heat pushing the Pistons a little bit, but ultimately Detroit's able to take that. Celtics sweep, Knicks in 5, Cavs sweep. I have the Cavs pushing the Pistons. I think the Cavs can actually beat the Pistons, so I'll say that to be a little contrarian here. Plus, I'm a little bit of a Detroit hater. Knicks Celtics going to go 7. I'm going to say the Knicks because I love the Knicks. And I think the Knicks can beat the Cavs and advance to the finals. As for the Western Conference, it wouldn't really shock me to see Denver upset San Antonio. But at the end of the day, I'm curious to see the stuff about the Spurs. The Spurs are an unbelievably good team that has not a lot of playoff experience at all. And I do have some concerns about that. I think ultimately, though, at the end of the day, the Thunder just walked to another title. I think they are the best team in the league. They have the most depth in the league. They do have flaws for sure, but I do think that they are the best team in the NBA for a reason. So right now, I think the Thunder win. And the bet that I've been giving out before is I've been giving out Northwest Division to be the NBA champions. I really like that play right now. Given that obviously the Nuggets and the Wolves are going to cannibalize each other here, but they're on the other side of the bracket from the Thunder. So I think it's possible that you have a Western Conference Finals with 2 teams from the Northwest Division facing off against each other, and then you're in a guaranteed position to at least have a representative in the NBA Finals. So I like that spot, and that's kind of the way that I'm looking at the NBA playoffs, at least from a bird's eye view right now. All right, guys. So for Pods and Recs, I have a couple of different recommendations, one of which, honestly, so I've been in the hospital a lot. The hospital food is not like the worst thing in the world sometimes, but it's dramatically different if you go to the cafeteria in the hospital. So I'm going to recommend that. Number 2, I am going to recommend groom your dogs. You know, I did that the other day. Normally, I like to take them to Tractor Supply and I'll like wash them there. Or like in the summer, I'll wash them with the hose outside. I just didn't have the time right now, so I took them to Petco. Great. Just awesome. Just drop them off there, work out a little bit, go back, pick them up in an hour. It's fantastic. Highly recommend. It's a little bit, obviously it's more expensive than if you just did it yourself, but sometimes you know what they say, time is money. You got to just do what you got to do. So recommending that. And then the last thing I'm going to recommend is I kind of love ShopRite fried chicken. I think it's the best. It's like the best. I think it's a great deal. I think the fried chicken's always good. It always smacks. So I'm going to recommend that. We've got like a wild kind of take on the playoffs right now. I don't know necessarily when the next episode of Cash That's going to come out. Hopefully it's just next week. I don't know if I don't really think I'm going to be able to get you guys another one right now. Might like be towards the end of next week. It's really going to depend. Baby is supposed to be here on Thursday. If it's here earlier, then great. If it's Thursday, then Thursday's the day. It's not going to be later than Thursday. I'll put it that way. So pretty excited about that. But again, excited about the baby, excited about the playoffs. Excited about being a dad again. So that's sick. Dad times 2, not dad again, still dad, but definitely going to be fun. And excited to have you guys in the huddle. Again, join that with the 50% discount below, and we will continue to cash that.